Hello, everyone. This is Prashant, and I'll be your host for the ChoubeySahab podcast. And today I have with us Raj and Aditya, who are the co founders of Stoa School, a 6 month MBA alternative that helps top talent break into high growth startups. If you're someone who's looking to do an MBA, then Stoa School is worth more than a consideration. Why? Because it's cheaper, it saves you time, and it also offers you higher quality learning while offering you a strong peer group that stays with you and supports you for a long time. We are so glad to have you here on this podcast, Aditya and Raj. Let's make this fun.
Thanks, man. Great. Excited to be here. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, thanks, Prashant. Glad to be here. Yeah, let's. I've seen you around on Twitter and ChoubeySahab podcast, and now happy to be here on your podcast. Yeah. So great to be here.
Great. It's lovely to be followed by such amazing people like you both. Also, I'll tell you a fun thing. While I was preparing this introduction, I usually introduce people by their full names. Okay. But then I went to Raj's profile, I saw his full name. I was like, okay, I'm going to change that. I'm only going to use the first names. That's it. Raj and Aditya, that's it. Cool. So glad to have you here. Now we'll do a quick sponsor plug, okay, like we usually do. But since I didn't get any sponsors, what we are going to do is we are going to do a 5 second silence. All right, uh, if you can support me in this, right? Let's start. Great. So that was silence for our sponsors since there are no sponsors at all. So if any of the sponsors want this slot, you can hit me up on Twitter or my email wherever. But this is a very valuable lesson. As you will see, the session goes on, and the amount of value that's created in this session, all of that you didn't capitalize on that. So get that sponsorship slot next time. Never mind. We're going to go move forward with the questions. I've prepared some very interesting questions about Stoa School and everything. But to get started, firstly, I want to know your individual respective stories. So you two have been in the startup ecosystem for long, active in this ecosystem for long. But then the Stoa School happened, and now it's doing great, obviously. But I want to know your stories before Stoa School. That part. Let's talk about that. Aditya, you go first.
Yeah, so I've always been in education. So I graduated from IMB way back in 2013 and started a company called Learning Outcomes, which was a B2B edtech company selling to schools. We were trying to sell analytical reports and insights to schools, which was a kind of tough thing because nobody likes accountability, right? So build that to significant revenue. In those times, of course, the startup ecosystem was vastly different. All these numbers that we hear now were unimaginable way back in that time. And then we realized we probably scaling that business to a large outcome is going to be very difficult. But we were fortunate enough to find a buyer, and it almost happened organically. We sold the company, then I moved on and then started creating another company called Baby on Board. And the thesis there was to create health and education data, or track health and education data using baby photos. So this was a shift from B2B K-12 to early parenting and B2C. Some of our thesis there itself sort of went wrong. So, we sort of tried to figure out how to move forward. And one of the lessons from that time was, there used to be these three words that were spoken a lot: content, community, commerce. And you had all these women centric platforms and platforms for, around babies, and very few of those actually survive today. I think the only company that survived from that whole game was actually Mama Earth and Momsco, which are more e-commerce transactional models. So Baby on Board was acquired by Roundglass. Roundglass is a US-based company. At Roundglass, then I created a socio-emotional well-being curriculum, India's first for children, and it was a wonderful experience. I worked with one of J. Krishnamurthy's students and crafted these 70 conversations for grade 3 to 9 around all the emotions that people go through, almost like rite of passage. In class 6, you have your first fight with your friends and you say, I'm not going to talk to this person ever. And some of those moments I think everybody goes through, and the conversations were around happiness, greed, justice, what is fair, what does relationships mean, what does friendship mean, what does success mean, how do I create how do I envision my life, and it was a beautiful thing that we did. And then I moved on, spent some time researching what, or really meditating on what I want to do next. Took a while to, like, get my head sorted. Then started with Questo, which was the earlier name for Stoa. And under Questo, I mean, that is when I met Raj, and we ran a bunch of experiments. I started Questo with a teenager well-being B2C offering. This was just right about the time pandemic hit, and everybody was basically rushing for a coding class, and nobody wanted to have conversations around emotions, I guess. And then we, of course, I mean, where, and Raj will have his story separately, but what really brought us together was this passion for learning communities on the internet. And I think that word learning community is still very beautiful, and what we are building at Stoa, at the core of it, it is a learning community. All of the labels that are there now are of course there, but yeah, that's my story. Raj, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I was born in Goa. I was brought up in Goa. Um, saw WhatsApp sort of take off along with the rest of the internet, right, when I just got into college. And the one theme that has persisted across my journey of the last decade, now that we are in 2022, has been that of missing out on a bunch of opportunities, right? And just because I was not born in a big enough city, did not grow up in an environment wherein people are talking about array dhanda business, like stock market, ye upar ja raha hai, niche ja raha hai, and just like general exposure to the financialization that had taken up in the world. My parents used to run a kirana store here in Goa, so can't really expect uh, much to come out of that, right? But the good thing that happened was that my parents had enrolled me for this computer classes when I was in my primary school, because there was some offer running, topped my class, and there was some offer around this, and that was my sort of introduction to the world of tech and the internet. Right, this was way back in 2003. I threw a big fit and managed to get a computer, right, with a dial-up connection, 2004, 2005. Um, and there's been no looking back ever since, because you are connected to the rest of the world in a way like never before. I used to spend hours on Wikipedia, right, in 2006. Used to copy assignments from Wikipedia before it became a thing, right? And this sort of made me feel like a part of a much bigger system than I was. But when I applied to MIT, the one in US, for my undergrad, thinking that, hey, why not, I am excited about science, I think I'm smart, I should probably get there. It was a rude awakening ki, like all the people who got in were people who'd done like these zillion internships and had developed some cool stuff and had all these foreign whatever opportunities, born and brought up to these elite households in the country. And that really like sort of kind of pissed me off somewhere, and I'm still pissed till this date ki अरे भाई, like हमें क्यों नहीं मिल रहा है, right? Like why do people who are sitting in like smaller towns, villages, not get the same amount of opportunity as these bade baap ki aulad sort of thing. And that event of not getting into MIT sort of triggered me into starting an NGO along with a few friends. Let's at least go out to schools here in Goa and talk to kids about technology, uh, because I believe that was the one way out, right? One way to connect to anyone else in the world and just get out of wherever you are, get a better life. Did that for about a year or two, realized the downsides of running this volunteer led organization, that when you move on, when you get busy in life, the thing sort of crumbles unless there's that culture, whatever, and culture in place for the organization, like a college club, to self sustain, right? It dies down when the people who started it found, move on. So that happened, experienced that, and then got into this whole scene of trying for a physics PhD, so on. Unfortunately or fortunately, that did not work out. And there I was, with a top tier degree, an engineering college. People call BITS to be an engineering college, but I had a science degree. I had said no to placements. I still probably don't know why anyone would like hire me, because I could code but was not really into coding. So I got into education with a friend from this not for profit, who was a Teach for India fellow, taught kids in Goa, some advanced math and science for almost 2 years. Um, I realized that it was really difficult to do anything different in this K-12 space when the likes of Baiju's were selling people, locking them in for almost like what, fifth standard to 12th standard. It was very difficult to do anything in that space out of the blue in Goa. Decided to go online, and that's when I sort of like gotten on Twitter because of a friend. Startup to Twitter, to be precise, 2018. I was on Twitter and I saw this guy Austin Allred talking about income share agreements and whatnot, and how it's a financial instrument is going to change everything. I was like, hey, this sounds exciting. This sounds like a very nice thing. Um, and I know that there is a problem here in India, right? Like engineering colleges suck. I've had a lot of smart friends who couldn't go to these top tier colleges because of bad exams and so on. So why don't we help them using this income sharing agreement model? Why don't we train them and just like do it up, for no upfront cost to them, and just ask them for a piece of their earnings once they get placed into startups. Ran that for about 1.5 years, 2018 to 2020, right? We did this completely remote. So if you remember pre-COVID, if you did not call people to a physical setting for a class, like a class, you put them on a Discord server and said, "Hey, this is a learning community." People would probably think you've lost your mind. कि अरे भाई internet पे like ऐसे कौन पढ़ सकता है? You need to get them in a class, right? तभी पढ़ेंगे लोग. So that was the attitude when we had started off doing this whole online community thing. Back then, CBC wasn't even a term. We learned a lot about people's motivation, what works for whom and what doesn't, right? Those were critical learnings. Also saw other people like Scalar Academy, right? Masai, Pesto, come and build businesses, raise venture capital, and so on, whereas we kind of failed to do that, right? So learned a lot of these things as an accidental entrepreneur. The goal was not to कि कुछ बड़ा business बनाएंगे, कुछ exit मारेंगे. I had no idea what these things meant, right? For a good amount of time, I had no idea that when you're raising funding, you're not selling your shares, but you're just like the company is issuing more shares and whatnot. So pretty like noob level understanding of business, but learned all of these things while at it. And that is when the COVID happened. We had to shut down our existing business because the job market kind of froze for a while. And bumped into Aditya, right, at that point of time, start jamming, talking about online communities because we met each other on an online community, though we shared the same alma mater. Almost like I don't know, 7 8 years of gap in the batch uh, intake, but met on an online community, bonded, and decided ki chalo, let's do something together. So yeah, from then on it was a long 6 month long yet short journey to get to this concept of Stoa School and bring it out to the world, right? And here we are, a year on.
Absolutely brilliant. I love to see how those two interesting stories converge into one, and then that the birth of Stoa School. So now we are here at Stoa School, right? So let's go from here. Like now, you both have met. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because if we see that you have already seen that online model of learning doesn't work in a way, right? And now you're trying to again take a shot at it in a different way, right? So how did you identify the problem you're going after, and how did you get that initial momentum towards this to our school, what we call today?
Yeah. So I think our thesis has evolved over time, right? In terms of the right user persona and like, who the program is for. And pleasantly, I mean, we were rather surprised by the market, right? So if you go back on whatever Internet Archive and the Time Machine, you would see that the first copy that we had written for the website was actually targeted at these people who have gotten into coding jobs and but did not like coding and wanted to move on the business side. Because I mean, probably, and that was more like a personal story, because when I got out of bits, I joined Juniper Networks, which when I was doing, like, some bit of coding, and I did not like it, and I wanted to move to the business side, which I did with the move to a move at ZS. And the whole copy was essentially for that persona, right? Like people who have gotten into coding but don't like coding, so they want to pick up business skills. But when we actually put out that copy, what we were surprised by, all these people who we basically told on the copy that this program is not for you. So on the copy we did not say, hey, this is for you if you're a STEM person or you're doing PhD, but we had PhDs and, like, not for profit people and people pursuing their MS come in and apply. There were people who were already in business roles who started applying. That was a revelation to us. So there were a bunch of these surprises, but over the last 15 months, so that was the starting point, and along the way we have sort of revisited that conversation a bunch of times. But if you ask me today, here is how we look at the world, and it's a slightly opinionated way. You mentioned about traditional MBA, and when we probably started, we were also thinking about, hey, how do we disrupt traditional MBA? But if you look at Indian traditional MBA, it primarily serves people who are still early in their careers, people who still have less than 12, 18 months of experience. Whereas a large part of people who come to Stoa's community now today have 3, 4, 5 months, years of experience, right? Um, and the reason primarily for that is once you cross that 2 year, 3 year barrier of experience, IMs are not really the greatest of choices for you for a couple of reasons. One, the whole CAD game becomes very difficult to crack. And second, even if you make it to an IIM, your cohort is likely going to be younger. Most of these companies like McKinsey, BCG like to train young people, right? So once you cross that 2, 3 year barrier, what are your options today? If you look at top tier, it is just ISP, or maybe you go to US. But both of these options have significant time and money costs. And maybe people who are in business roles who are already doing well for themselves don't want to take a year off and take on loans. But more interestingly, I think what also happens once you have 3, 4, 5 years of experience is you start questioning yourself whether I'm creating impact at work, whether my career is headed in the right direction. um, when you're 21, 22, just out of college, you have all these dreams. Like, for example, Raj wanted to go and do a PhD from MIT, and I probably wanted to start on my own right out of college, from bits, but that did not happen. So I think a realization also comes after 4 or 5 years, is that everything that I dreamt for myself is probably not happening. So what do I do? And there is that struggle to find a purpose, ikigai, whatever you may call it. On the personal side, if you're out of college for 4 or 5 years, your friends are drifting away, their lives have taken or taken them on different journeys. So you're also trying to figure out, like, how do I make friends, and, like, how do I make, let's say, even how do I search for a partner if that hasn't happened already. So I think when you're 25, 26, 27, something is happening, and what Stoa tries to do today is look at that whole person approach, right? Like, so in K-12 there is this concept called whole child approach, which is, if you're trying to educate a child, you need to look at the whole of him or her, right? Like emotions, their interest in different topics. So there is this whole child system, and with Stoa, what we are trying to do is, if you are interested in business, if you are thinking about business roles, and you are in this phase of life, can we create an experience for you over 6 months where you are able to find clarity for yourself, you are able to find new friends for yourself, you are able to grow both personally and professionally. And I think that is what is that has been our learning over 15 months, right? So from that very copy targeted at engineers and saying, if you have 2 years of work and come and do Stoa, to seeing, hey, all of these people who are 25, 26, 27, all of them are searching for something. They're looking for supercharging their careers. They are looking for clarity. They are looking for new friends. And can Stoa sort of serve that need? Of course, at a fraction of a price that typical ISB, MBA, or
Right. 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 Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And now the question arises that you're still pretty new in this market, right? And you don't have much credibility that, okay, we have these students who are already placed or any success stories to show, right? You're pretty new in this. And you're competing against a potential MBA, traditional MBA, that also gives you a certificate that, okay, now you are a certified MBA. But I guess Stoa doesn't offer that kind of a certificate that you can say, okay, now you are an MBA. Okay, so how did you prove the credibility in that initial stage? Now, of course, you have your success stories there, and there is that entire community that's now built that actually markets for itself. But in that initial stage, when you had nothing of this sort, how did you market your pitch or pitch yourself that this is something that you should do, rather than going for an MBA? Yeah, who wants to take that?
I think the thing to keep in mind is that the market, we may be new, but so is the market, right? That's I think my sense. We're pretty much creating a category in here because, as Aditya mentioned, people who don't really fit into the existing scheme of things, they also have needs, right? And right now the incumbents never thought about giving them, making an offering, that is something that will delight this set of users, and that is the market that we are going after, right? And the way people look at credibility itself is quickly changing. It's no longer about like a top down authoritarian, like I'm giving you a degree, hence you uh, it means something, because almost everyone, every knowledge worker out there today has a degree, and they know that it's just a tick box, right? Like it's just a tick box somewhere in some form. And the game increasingly now is moving towards what can you do, what can you bring to the table, right? So I think that is the whole proof of work. I think a lot of people talk about this whole proof of work thing. That is what we are moving towards, that is what we are driving, right? As a change key, instead of showing people a degree, why don't you show people the work that you can pull off or have pulled off, right? And bootstrapping this credibility, bootstrapping a community is there is no formula around it. It's of course like right bang in the domain of brand and marketing, right? And I think I don't want to pat my back too much, but we collectively, I think, understand these things very well by the very nature of having been in this line of work, right, for the last, as I said, decade or so. We've failed enough number of times to know what really works to attract the the right set of people that will bring in with them their own vibes, their own culture for the program, right? I think that is something we sort of pulled off very well.
I would like to add something, right? Like, I know Raj makes it sound very easy, but I think what was also special about all these people who joined in the first 100, 200 people, they themselves looked at, their own selves as rebels. So they were like, hey, Stoa seems like this, rebellion against the system, against the MBA, against the high loans, against theory, more doing by, learning by doing kind of approach. And a lot of people, I think, came for that. It was more a bet. I mean, as much as they were betting on us, they were also betting on themselves in some sense. Like, they were not looking for something to add to resume, even till today, right? Like, we are now starting our cohort 5 6 admissions are opening, and so on and so forth. um, Even today, less than 30% of any of the cohorts that we run actually opts into our career success process. And that something tells about those people, right? Like, they know that if I get that clarity, if I get whatever I feel is missing piece in my whole, jigsaw puzzle of my career, if I get that from Stoa, then I am capable enough to go on and bring about the change that I'm seeking. Of course, Stoa has its own career success process and all that. But I think what is very interesting about these people is they look at themselves as rebels. I think some of them are also kind of pissed off by what traditional education system did to them in some sense, right? Because they don't fit the traditional models of evaluation of competence, which is, can you solve a number of MCQs in a set amount of time? By the way, both Raj and me, we have done that. So it's not like, we understand, but that is only one way of measuring competence. There could be another way of demonstrating competence. And I think all these people who are, as Raj said, left out by the traditional methods of evaluation or traditional ecosystem, those are the people who are now finding value in Stoa. And of course, all of these are brilliant people. So when they come together, uh, value gets unlocked, right? And that is how now it has started compounding.
I remember this one question that we still do get often is, hey, what is the acceptance rate? Okay, everyone wants to hear some 0.000 some number percent, right? Like, our answer to them has always been, you know, that only people who are crazy enough join Stoa, right? Like, why? My question back is, why do you think anyone would join something so new, which is under a year old and so on? Why would they do that? They need to be like crazy, ready to have some sense of confidence. Ki I can get more out of this than some,
Absolutely.
thappa
Yeah.
that I can get over here, right? So if
Mhm.
you think that's what you fit into, like, apply, right? Like, most definitely apply. If you're looking to play the traditional game, maybe we are not the right place for you. So it's more of just being upfront and not indulging in any like mis-selling, or rather just selling to everyone who comes and knocks on your door, right? That's not something that we sort of believe in ourselves. And I think that also somewhere that people get that, right? We are not here to just make some quick buck or enroll everyone.
EdTech which doesn't call you until you buy is so rare in Indian ecosystem. I think that is
Yeah.
another reason why people also like Stoa.
That's great. Like the edtech system is like so saturated with such pushy marketing and everything, sales line. There are so many scam stories. Some of these, companies don't even respond to, on social, and they don't. Some of them don't even have these socials, so they like the stories don't come up front. But I like this take that you're being upfront. That okay, if you're crazy enough, if you have that rebel in you, then we are the best place for you, right? And that's amazing positioning that you're telling them exactly that okay, if you're that kind of a person, then come to us, we'll give you the best experience possible and the best learning possible. Absolutely brilliant. And it's very rare to see founders say that, because they always want to go after a bigger market. A bigger market for you would be like, we are the alternate to MBA. Like if you're considering an MBA, consider us, we are probably better, right? As simple as that. But I love that you're positioning it in this way, that okay, if you're crazy enough, if you're motivated enough, and if you want to do something different and then go the traditional route, then Stoa is the choice that you should make. So absolutely brilliant. Also, another question that I have is, since the inception of Stoa, from when it started till today, I see that Stoa has changed quite a bit from what it used to be back then. You have shipped multiple iterations and different experiences, changed a lot of things here and there, done pivots. So tell me about this, how Stoa has evolved over the past year or so, or since when it started. Who wants to go for this one?
Raj, can I take it?
Sure.
Yeah. So when we launched Stoa, right, of course, the approach was let's ship MVP and see what happens, right? Because we were anyway taking on only 20 people in our cohort one. We were surprised when Raj tweeted out and we had like 1,000 applications, 1,000 leads in like next 5 days. And then we started with a cohort of 27. Now that format was very interesting. It was a 12-week format and it was daily 90 minutes. Yeah. So it was basically 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. every single day for 3 months on a trot. And what we learned in that process were a couple of things, right? There were issues on the demand side. Primarily, everybody is a working professional at store. Most, I would say 95% of the people, and they would burn out by the end of 3 months, right? Because imagine you being on that 90-day cycle where 90 minutes every day and 90 minutes is sync. There is also a sync component, which is you have to read and come to the class. I was teaching a lot of sessions in cohort one, and I also burnt out, right? Because so that was another realization that if we have to sort of serve more people, then the supply side will also will need to relook at the business. And lastly, there was no breathing space in that format, right? Because it was just every single day you're going at it, and you have this very limited window of 12 weeks There was no breathing space, no breathing space for serendipity to happen, no breathing space to have conversations outside of learning. And they did happen. So I remember, in fact, our cohort one graduation party, I think it started at 7 p.m. and went on till 10 a.m. the next day. Like, there were some six people still standing next
Yeah,
day on a Zoom, right? Like, imagine on a Zoom.
I've heard that story. They're pretty crazy. We'll go deeper into this later. Yeah,
Yeah.
go
So that
ahead.
was our learning from cohort one, and then we said we need to create more breathing space. We need to relook at our, model, and then we moved from 12 weeks to 24 weeks. We moved most of the sync learning part to weekends, and as we moved over weekends, what we also started realizing that most of these working professional or adults, they don't like to be lectured. They're not here. There is probably all the content available on YouTube, Coursera, Udemy. They are here because they want to challenge themselves. They want to work with other people and see where they can push the envelope, and all these rebel kind of personas, right? And that is where this idea of case weekend sort of came in. And now almost one third of Stoa is actually, or one third weekends at Stoa are like Saturday morning. You get a problem or a business challenge, you get your team, and you have 24 hours to go at it, right? And people really do really go hard at it, right? Like I've seen people staying up until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, hanging on Discord, helping each other, and then coming back at 10 a.m. to present the case. And so those have been some of the changes, right? Like a lot more focus on doing, moving the sync time to the weekends, creating that breathing space. So on weekdays now we have all these community events which are light-hearted banter. You're talking to other people, you're talking to some people from the startup ecosystem. And I think, as we have iterated and, whatever changes we have made, one of the sort of our benchmark, Manoj, who is one of the co-founders at Stoa, and he runs the program now. And he keeps saying this, that Aditya, I don't want to graduate idiots, right? Like, and I think that sets a pretty high bar in terms of what you want to do within the program. And the second thing about our program design approach is we tell this to our fellows also. We are going to treat you like adults, right? Like there is no assessment. We are not saying you need to pass some end-term exam or something like that. You are adult enough. You've experienced life, and you know what is in your best interest. Now, if you feel not turning up for weekend is in your interest and you want to watch the video later, I mean, it's fine by us, right? I'm not going to come and pester you. And uh, so yeah, so a lot of it is also about how we want to, and I guess a lot of this is about Raj and my backstory, right? Like which is our experiences is in K-12, Raj running that alternative education space in Goa, me going on my own wild hunt and trying to understand all these alternative education systems. So all of that, plus what we know from our MBA days, I have done it from IIM Bangalore, Manoj has done it from UT Austin. So वो सबका खिचड़ी है, right? Like और गोपाल काला है. You can, I mean, I think that is a better word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds great, like how it has evolved over the time, and you've learned from what didn't go right, and then you improved upon that, and now it's a much more easier experience, and now more relationships are also getting fostered while the learning is happening. So that's great. So my next question for you is like, what can a student expect at the end of the batch, or when they have ended the Stoa school? What can they expect? What's your promise that when you come to Stoa school, at the end of it, you'll be this, or you will have this thing? What's that? Yeah.
So I think there are four or five main outcomes, right? Like our transformational promise, if I have to summarize it, and we focus a lot on that within the program, the transformational promise is that you will learn how to get things done. And when we say you will learn how to get things done, what it means is, given a brief, you will know what are the right questions to ask. You will know how to push back. You will know how to commit. You will know what resources you should ask for to get that thing done. You will know the process that you will need to deploy to get things done. And finally you will get work done, right? Like, so when you go to your workplace, your existing workplace or a new workplace, you will be able to build a reputation that this person gets shit done, right? On a more, transactional level, I think one of the best things that happens out of store, and couple of things there. One is people get clarity about where they are headed. That is why we invest in coaching. That is why we invest in mentoring. That is why we invest in a lot of this community conversations. Second, they graduate with at least few friends, right? Like I have seen people like a lot of Stoa Insta is. I mean, Twitter is a different vibe, but a lot of Insta, Stoa Insta, like people who are within the community, is basically people hanging out together, and right. So we graduate with a bunch of friends, and lastly, I think everybody graduates with fluency in business language, right? Like there is a particular way in which today's business is spoken about, and like what is PMF and what is 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and what is LTV and what is CAC, and so there are a lot of these insider kind. It's almost like a Sanskrit of our times, like which is spoken in Koromangala or Indiranagar. I think people also graduate with that language fluency. Of course, a bunch of them who have looking for career transition also sort of make that transition, most like except for one probably in everybody who opted, and everybody else has made transitions as well.
Great. Also, you just mentioned about the community part, like how the community doesn't just stay inside of Store, but it's also very visible outside on platforms like Twitter or maybe Instagram. So it's the community is very visible. You can feel the vibe. I've personally never attended a Stoa, but I feel a part of the community even though I've never attended one. So that's the kind of the vibe that's there. So how do you build that kind of a vibe or that kind of a community? How do you foster it? I want to like give me some insights. How what happens on the inside? What do you guys do to make it happen? This community thing and the bonding thing.
I think we get this question a lot, and to be honest, I don't know what is the like bullet pointed answer to this question. All I can say is that there are a few principles that we abide by, which we sort of believe in. Uh, One of them being that people you select for need to be extremely helpful to each other, right? Need to be extremely supportive of each other, and that's what you see sort of overflowing on Twitter, kind of, right? Like it's just that it's just people trying to be helpful to each other, right, and celebrating each other, most importantly. So that is, I think, the top principle that we abide by. The second thing that we try and encourage people to do is get rid of that fear that someone's going to judge you for putting your thoughts out there, right? Or just like voicing your opinion, or yeah, just putting work that you've put so much effort into in front of the public eye. And that, I think, contributes to contributes to what you see on Twitter. Like people just it's just people who are confident, right? People who are people who've come to terms with who they are, and open with their identities, sharing it with the world. I think it's just that the sad part is that we're so not used to seeing that, so not used to being that, is that it looks like, oh, yahan pe kuch alag kuch chal raha hai, this some, I don't know, I'm sure people out there would have said, yeah, this looks like a cult, yeah,
I
fostering
remember
FOMO.
the tweet, like very recently, right? And this person who said कि अरे स्टोआ तो फोमो पे चल रहा है, आधा स्टोआ फोमो पे चल रहा है. And I sort of went and said आधा नहीं यार, पूरा ही फोमो पे चल रहा है. And I think we have also evolved, right? Like, and I think it is not just about people who are joining Stoa community, but also people who work at Stoa. And we have gone through our own struggles. We have made a bunch of mistakes. And in general, I think our life philosophy now is how can we just avoid zero sum games, right? Like, I think why people sort of celebrate each other so much in Stoa, because none of them are chasing same day zero jobs. They all of them have different destinations, and they want to encourage each other to reach that destination. So, no, and I think that is very important from even so. For example, if you look at the whole education landscape that is evolving now, Tanay is doing Invact, and we would love for Invact to succeed. We would love for Newton to succeed. We would love for Masai to succeed. We would love for Scalar to succeed. Because inherently, I think this is not a zero sum game. This is not even a winner takes it all kind of game. And so this is one sort of philosophical underpinning behind what we do within the community. uh, Other thing I think is it's not just two of us, right? Like I think the people who we brought in and people who are actually operationalizing most of this stuff, they are really good with people. So for example, Shelton, Nikaya, Sonali now runs our events, and they have taste. They are not doing a job. They are passionate about music. They are passionate about philosophy. They are passionate about, what I mean, they have taste, right? Like I think
Yeah.
when you have community managers or whatever title you may call it, they
Mhm.
need to have taste. So that is my two bit on that question.
I think to add to it, we also do not think of ourselves as some tech company, right? We don't really have any full-time engineers, right? I mean, we do have engineers on the marketing side of things, but they're not like we don't have engineers building some product, all right? We do not believe we are a product company fundamentally. We are a education company. We're more of a media company, right? It's a high touch, involvement that we see ourselves rather than chalo, how do we scale this shit, right? That's tech is not like I don't believe tech is an answer to most people's problems. If it was, then I think Coursera would have Udemy would have changed the entire world upside down. That's not happening, right? Because it's a people business at the end of the day, and you need to go in with that approach, knowing that you're not probably going to be the next Facebook or Google or something like that, and that's perfectly fine because we are changing lives. People are happy, we are happy at the end of the day. So it's also that attitude with what the founders, what the team wants out of the business or institution, whatever you may call it. Right? Like I think in education, the more you try and like milk it, the like sadder the scene sort of gets, right? If you treat it as a venture business wherein her like half a year have to raise a round or whatnot, right? Then your incentives really go away from thinking about the user and what would be good for the brand in the long run. Those things just go out of those conversations go out of the window, and you're like,
Yeah.
short term
Yeah.
में कैसे game करना है, right? So I think these are things that we are avoiding at
Yeah,
Tech.
and just to be fully honest, right, not that we have not thought about raising around or like how do we sort of become whatever valuation, right? But the more we have reflected on these questions and the more conversations we have had with VCs, we are also trying to figure out. Hey, we of course have ambition and we want to build a big company, but what is the way to get there, and can we be patient about it? And I think Stoa MBA or the community is not something that you just like you can 10x or grow 10% every month.
Right. Right. Right.
So what is the right way to scale? That is the question really on our mind.
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. Also, correct me if I'm wrong. Stoa recently raised a VC round. Is that wrong?
So it was largely founders. So for example, that story is also very interesting.
Okay.
Nitin Kamath actually came for inaugural of Stoa's Cohort 3.
Right.
And I think we had some great fun time, fun conversation. And I think 2 3 days later he went on Twitter and he saw these people putting like fellow at Stoa in their bio, and and then he buzzed us and he said, hey, are you paying people to put this on their bio? And we said, no, we are not doing that. Like if people have put it by themselves.
Yeah.
What sort of led to conversation, and then we basically, this is not a VC round, it was basically bunch of founders, with whom we have spoken for the longest amount of time about what we are building, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's how it happened. But there is
Exactly.
a traditional VC firm on the capital as such.
Got it, got it. And yeah, I get that there is a difference between raising from founders and raising a VC round because founders understand that how good companies built, and VCs are more focused on you have to scale this company to this X, 10x, 20x by this time, and they set these targets. Might be wrong, but that's what my perception is. So, but founders do understand more, right? That you can connect with them.
VCs bring a certain value. Of course, they understand market dynamics. They have a
Yeah.
bunch. they have their own expertise. And you have all these successful big companies out of the VC world. But I think before you take on money from VCs, you yourself need to have the clarity in terms of what is linearly going to scale in some sense, right? And we still don't feel Stoa MBA or not MBA or whatever you call it is there where it can linearly scale to 30,000 people. Now we have tried to defend that saying कर सकते हैं 30,000 कर सकते हैं,
Yeah.
बट कर सकते हैं क्या अभी नहीं पता है हमको, अभी तो देखेंगे.
Yeah, that's nice. I love that take and love that honesty. And you have to be honest with yourself with these things, because then once you get into this rut of raising funds every 6 months and something, then that becomes the focus. And I feel that you might lose focus from building the actual core product. So once it's there, then you can think about scaling it. So yeah, also you mentioned a lot of CBC projects that are still working in the lines like Stoa is doing for the business landscape. There is Invac, there is Masai, and there is so many more. But I want to understand the landscape in the job market. What's their view on CBCs like? Are they getting more accepting and more? Are they building a more soft corner for CBCs now that okay, this is acceptable if there is Stoa School somewhere written in their CV, they value it. There is Masai written or in fact written somewhere to evaluate. So how's that stuff going on the hiring part? Are just startups valuing it because startups have this visibility that okay, these companies are coming and they're doing good work. But what about the bigger companies? Are they also accepting these kind of courses, cohort-based courses that are coming up?
I think generally these are new programs on the block, and as any good recruiter or HR would tell you, when something new comes up with a new promise, they will give it a try, right? At least for once to see कि अरे quality क्या है, right? So there is always that initial hype and initial whatever people come to check you out. I remember talking to a founder who once advised me, do not get fooled by people coming to you, right? If they'll of course go to anyone and everyone because the talent problem is that hard. The real question is what happens 3 years in, right? Like, do people still come back to you? Because it's not only अरे अच्छा talent मिल गया, does that person stay loyal to you, right? Like, what are that person's values, principles, right? How are they delivering? Are they scaling up to becoming a leader or whatnot? These things only become obvious um, few months, years down the line. So I think I would
Right.
still wait for that to sort of simmer, right? But early proof points, we've seen people who we've placed at startups come back and recruit people from junior cohorts who they're now
Right.
managing, right, at their company and so on. So
Hmm.
clearly there's some loop kicking in there, right, which I think you need to wait for time to get a better sense of how it unfolds.
No, I think, and for the next few years, right, it is going to stay employees market in some sense. The balance has just flipped. There is such high demand for talent, and whether it is a traditional degree or whether it is something like Stoa or Scalar or Masai, I think it does give a leg up. It at least says that you have tried to learn something, right? Like it signals that. And but yeah, it is employees market basically. I don't think employers or even Stoa, for example, when we are hiring, we can be very demanding and we have a lot of choice, right? Like for an HR who is receiving 5,000 applications, maybe is Stoa signal today, maybe not, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it makes lives easier for some of these hiring managers as well when they know that somebody is coming from some of these boot camps or alternate programs.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Also, moving on to some crazy stories, like Stoa is about people, and when people come together, some crazy things happen, right? And I know for a fact that a lot of crazy stories have arisen out of Stoa. Like some of my past colleagues have been into Stoa, and they share stories like what kind of stuff happens here. There are a lot of late nights I've heard, and people keep vibing. So give me some crazy stories of building Stoa till now. What have the experiences been like?
One crazy story that comes to my mind is I think cohort 2. two people who joined in the cohort. Apparently, they were workmates almost a decade and a half, or
20 years back.
20 years back.
So
All right.
Kanchana and Green had worked together in their first job out of college, then had lost touch and sort of met again in Stoa, like 20 years later. Like Green is at Intel, Kanchan is building her own company. So that was like, truly small world kind of thing. I mentioned about the cohort one, or the graduation night that went on for quite a while. Our cohort three, I think half of the cohort sort of decided to meet each other in Goa and spend 2 3 days together, and we hear that was quite a party. Yeah, these are some of the things, right?
We've had, I think, people become roommates. Right, people
Yeah,
have moved in together. Multiple instances now, in under a year. Right, partly because I think apartment hunting in Bangalore is not so easy. Right, uh,
Yeah.
but but yes, there've been all these crazy stories. There've been people who've flown from abroad to come for that Goa meetup. Someone who's just had a baby 2 3 weeks ago, like, come for that meetup. Someone left their friend's wedding and came for the meetup. So yeah, I think like every day there's some surprise about just acts of
what was
kindness.
interesting, right? Like we recently had Mumbai meetup, Raj and me were in Mumbai, and we had, people from our cohort one and people which was cohort five, which is yet to start. And all of them being there and introducing each other, saying, "Hey, I'm from C1 and I'm from C2 and I'm from like C5." And, in fact, I went for another cohort based course as a guest, and there was somebody from Stoa there, right? And he said, "Hey, I'm from cohort two. Any other stones here?" And then like couple of people were like, "Yeah, I'm from C3 and I'm from C4," and they're like, "Hey, nice to have all these stones together." Right? Like so, I think there is some serendipity, some fun happening there. It is interesting, wonderful to actually see it. Those are the moments uh, when it sort of feels all of this is worth it. In fact, cohort three graduation, um, we had this roast, and I think this was the first time like Stoa Dundee's sort of happened, right? Like if you watch Office, and these Ujwal, who is our cohort three fellow, he sort of like went on roasting, starting with us, me, Raj, Manoj, and Stoa team to like other people within the community, and like there was this banter, and that graduation party, people were like together, like imagine like it's supposed to be a Zoom graduation party, but Bangalore people have decided to come together. Mumbai people are attending it from the same place. Somebody is running some pop-up for her business, and couple of other fellows are helping her at that pop-up, and all of these people are then like we had this musician come in, and all of these people are dancing together.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and,
was
and what happened on that night, which went on from like around midnight to the next day's morning? What was happening on that night?
I think people just talked their hearts out, right? Like people spoke about their ambitions. People spoke about what do they watch on Netflix, and people talked about relationships, and people spoke about breakups. And I remember I actually went to sleep around like 12 o'clock or something, and then I was still like, hey, like has the party ended? Not so. I got up at 2 o'clock. I then again started talking or being there, and then I had a flight to catch. So I was actually traveling from here to Shirdi. So I traveled to Shirdi. From Shirdi airport, I joined again, and it was still going on. And then from Shirdi, I landed in Bangalore, and from Bangalore, I checked in, and it was still going on. And
Brilliant.
a few people were
Brilliant.
still on Zoom call. So I think cohort one, the premier cohort was a different vibe, and every cohort, right? Like it has such different flavors. Every cohort has front benchers, back benchers. You have all these sports enthusiasts. Like it's almost like how you would expect the college to be. The only thing is these are like adults, like people with a significant number of years experience behind them.
Absolutely. That just says a lot about how you Stoa is building like real relationships that extend out of the program and just does not stay while the program is going on, but even after it's over. Brilliant stuff. Uh, Also, like I want to ask this question. Maybe it's a bit too formal for you guys. Like, But what are your future plans for Stoa? Like, what do you want to make it into? Do you want to go global and teach everyone across the globe business education, bring people together? What does it look like? Or do you want to extend beyond business? That today you're doing business education, tomorrow you start tech, or day after you start some other thing, maybe HR or something like that. What does it look like?
Yeah, these are all strategic choices to be made, right? Like, for example, geography, we are thinking about that question. We are thinking about we should we have function specific programs? Do we need to have a separate marketing program and a separate sales program and a separate product program? And all of these questions we are pondering over. For now, we are sticking to sort of trying to figure out how do we serve more people within the existing program, because even now we are doing quarterly cohorts, and for cohort 5 we had to put like 40 people on wait list because we could not accommodate them as part of cohort 5. So we're trying to figure out how to build more supply and how to serve more people in the existing program. As far as other domains like tech or design, that is not on our horizon, because I think this is a big enough play. This program, for example, has value for a country like Indonesia where there are no IIMs. This program probably has value for Middle America, which is trying to think of tech jobs and so on. So I think opportunity wise, there are a lot of ways in which we can grow the existing program. And I think 2022 for us is largely going to be about making those strategic choices, testing, early hypothesis, seeing what succeeds, what sticks, and then scaling it.
Great. So also I see that like there has been consistent, marketing around Stoa. Like there has been multiple launches, some pivots, brilliant stuff happening on the marketing end. I want to learn like how do you manage to churn out consistent content that actually resonates with your target audience and reaching the right audience, and also managing different platforms. I see that you're pretty active on LinkedIn, pretty active on Twitter, even Instagram. I see Stoa ads running these days, Stoa newsletter and stuff. So how are you keeping that thing running, the marketing side of things?
Think one thing that we swear by is ki create as much value as you can for people, right? I'd rather spend money running ads, giving people some value, rather than just doing apply now, sort of a CTA, which I don't think we tried it for a while, but we realized it's not our style, it's not our vibe. So it's I think all about, hey, how do we entertain people, how do we help people out with whatever problems they have around careers primarily, right? These are the two questions we ask ourselves, day in and day out, and something comes up, right? Something or the other, through iteration, just mixing two things that you've done before, seeing what is working for others, right? Just following brands that, let's say, we really respect, some of them in the US, trying to apply some of those lessons here, and just talking to a lot of users, right? And building that goodwill. I think respond to almost every Twitter DM that has some actionable answer that I can give. Same with LinkedIn, right? Because that helps us understand what people want and give it back to them, can build it into some scalable campaign, right? What we've realized, again, yeah, like, entertainment works a lot. It's not normal for most education institutions or schools or programs to pull off entertainment, right? Because you just think like you don't have to be a thought leader all the time, but I think we've decided to activate our entertainment route as well, and that's working very well for us.
Actually, Paki, who is one of our investors in Stoa, he wrote a very interesting, not boring article called Pareto Frontier, right? And I think for 2022, a lot of our strategy is actually how do we have more fun, both inside of company and then within the community, right? And I think that itself is, I think people want that, right? Given how last 2 years have panned out and what everybody has been through. I mean, yes, people are looking for learning and people are looking to grow, but they're looking to do that in a way where they don't, they inherently like it. And you only, as adults, you can't like force people to say that attendance itna chahiye or ye aisa chahiye, right? A lot of what we do within the community is also like, how can we have more fun? And I think that's a pretty good benchmark. Like, even if we are doing some content on Twitter, or even sessions that we do at Stoa, a lot of times the question is, if I'm on the other side of this bargain, am I going to like it? Will I attend this session? So for example, like, I turn up for many sessions when I feel it can add value to me. So I think that's a pretty interesting mental model, or like, benchmark that we use, which is, would I like to be on the other side of this content piece, or on the other side of this session, or other side of this bargain in general?
Yeah, that's great, and that keeps the focus. I think that that's what we call the value first marketing. That you're creating value wherever you're going, and by that people know you, and when they need you even a little bit, they know where to go, right? So brilliant stuff. Also, now coming on to the last section of this podcast recording, I have a rapid fire section for you, where I have 5 questions prepared in the this or that section. You have to choose one between the two quickly. Okay. So I'll do this with both of you separately. Okay, because otherwise it'll be difficult. And you're free to make different choices. That's totally fine, right? So just 5 questions, and you both will get one abstain each. One question that you do not want to answer, you'll just abstain. Okay. So I'll start with Raj. So the first question is slow and sustainable or fast and exponential? Quick.
Slow and sustainable. It took me time, but yeah, that's
Great. Community or product?
community because meaning,
Got it. Hustle or calmness?
calmness,
Twitter or LinkedIn?
Twitter any day, right?
Vibes or credentials?
It's obvious, man. Vibes, right? Vibes are the new credentials.
Great, great. You sailed through it pretty easy. You didn't use the abstain. That's great. Coming to Aditya, slow and sustainable or fast and exponential?
Slow and sustainable.
Community or product?
Product.
Product. Great. Hustle or calmness?
Calmness.
Twitter or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. 100 days of MBA.
I see the age gap here, like for the first time in this recording. Okay, vibes or credentials? Last one.
I think credentials, right? They do matter. Stoa is a credential too.
Great, absolutely great. So with that, we come to the end of this episode, and I'd like to thank you for appearing this on this episode. We got a lot of knowledge of how Stoa works, how you try to make it fun, and I love how your focus is on building great experiences and great relationships, and not running Stoa like a traditional company that just wants to grow at any cost. So that's brilliant. Always keep doing that. Don't let that go at any cost. So I mean,
Uh, Before you sort of go, right? Like,
yeah,
uh, I mean, relationships and experiences happening,
yeah.
but we're not coming at the expense of growth. We are still growing
Exactly, exactly,
quarter to quarter, right? So, and that is revenue, not number of users. So,
exactly.
uh, just I think it is a false binary. Like, I
Yeah,
genuinely believe that actually, if you create value, that will lead to growth in
very
users
true.
and like
Very true.
quantity.
That's very true. I totally agree with that. That when you're creating value, then automatically growth will happen. But I said that because, like, we see the other traditional edtech companies doing it in a way where they are hard focused on growth. And I see that you're doing it the right way. You're creating value first, and that's how you want to grow, right? It's not like growth at all costs. I just want to make the sale, no matter if they feel scammed or what. Like, so you're taking the right approach. That's what I'm mentioning. You're also growing, but you're also doing it in the right way while making people have fun and build meaningful relationships, and also learn. That part is also there. So great stuff. Thank you for appearing on this episode. Now I will ask you both to plug your individual social first. Raj, starting with you. Uh, where can people follow you on social media?
Everywhere. But starting with I think Twitter, then going on to Instagram because I'm trying to get more active there.
Great.
And then there's of course Gyanbazi happening on LinkedIn all the time. I think you can go to bio.link/. kunksed, KUNKSED, and get access to my social links and few of my content pieces that I'm like rather proud of.
Great. And he's also running some really fun dating, sessions these days on Twitter, right? So you can get to be a part of those. Aditya, coming to you. What all do you want to plug?
Yeah, so twitter.com/bizaditya, right? Like, so biz stands for business,
Absolutely.
and you can find me everywhere else. The photo follows, yeah. So it's, if you see red color and a person in front, that's probably Stoa employee or one of the Stoa co-founders.
Absolutely. The branding is happening all the way. And Raj is still wearing red. He's always on brand. He also has a red background.
I
Raj,
didn't expect the background to come on, but well, I think I fit in right now. So yeah,
brilliant stuff. He's always on brand, right? So great. Thank you for coming on. I'll make sure to put all those links in the description below, including all the links for Stoa social, and the Stoa website, where people can go and check out or even apply from there. For the cohort six, the when will the applications open for cohort six?
They're actually opening, I think, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That is
just
that'll be
13th of Jan.
13th of January, because we are recording on a different date.
Yeah,
So
13th Jan.
yeah, 13th of January, the opening the application for cohort 6 will be open. So by the time this video goes out, they will be already open. So you can go to stoaschool.com and apply right away when this video is out. Thank you for coming on. I hope you enjoyed, Aditya and Raj.
Yeah, thank you, Prashant. Thank you for having us.
Thanks,
Maybe
folks.
ChoubeySahab, if that is how you prefer to be called. Yeah,
No,
it's
either
really
way, either way. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.